That was fighting for gay rights, and people were killed.
Nobody was killed at Stonewall.
Nobody was killed.
You know, now that it's been almost 6 years since the airing of season 11, you sort of forget that at one point, Rajah was one of the most badly received queens from the fan base up until that point. That of course would go on to redeem herself on All-Star 6. Yet with that, we saw the evolution of a queen largely caused by a storm of fans that essentially harassed her on all social medias. What's more is that it opens up a broader conversation about villains within the Drag Race franchise. But before we start, this video is sponsored by Raycon. Are you someone that cares about having good audio quality when listening to music or watching your favorite YouTube videos? Well, you're in luck. Let me introduce you to Raycon's everyday earbuds. Raycon's products offer the same audio quality as their leading competitors, but at half the price. With over 3 million of their pairs of earbuds sold to date, Raycon has become a favorite among listeners. Mind you, now is the perfect time to check them out because they just launched an upgraded model of their best-selling product. The best part is that you get a 30-day happiness guarantee, so you can buy with confidence. Some of the key features of the new everyday earbuds includes ergonomic designs that ensures a comfortable fit for all day wear, multi-point connectivity that allows you to pair with 2 devices at once, making switching between your phone and laptop seamless. It also has active noise cancellation and it's produced in a variety of different colors. My favorite ones being the green ones because hey, I love green. I've been using these earbuds while working out at the gym, which is why I love that you can also get a protective case for them for those that want added security or just a cool flair.
Don't miss out on this incredible deal and click the link in the description to head over to buyraycon.com/greengay for 20 to 50% off your order, which includes free shipping. Get this order while you still can. Now, let's begin.
Whatever opinion you may have on what constitutes a queen to be labeled a villain, there is one thing that we can all agree on, and it's that within the longevity of the series, there was some point in the timeline when queens started to become fully aware that their actions in front of the cameras could be used against them, especially if for some reason they become one of the least likable people in the cast. So if you were a queen that wanted to display unapologetic behavior, you were essentially taking a gamble, because you can assume all you want that you're in control, but nobody can ever predict the way the public is going to react. Some say the shift started when Jeremy Carey, aka Phoebe O'Hara, pivoted into the #1 spot of Ultimate Drag Race villain in both her runs on season 4 and All Stars 2. From Jeremy's story, one thing was very apparent. Yes, getting on the show at this point, regardless of your placement, would usually result in at least a couple years of recurring gigs. Unfortunately, if fans really don't like you, they aren't very likely to be attending any of your shows. So less and less club promoters will be interested in calling you back for a gig. Essentially, a queen's own career was now on the line if her behavior was deemed inappropriate. Although, where exactly do we go from here? Rajah Ohara's story is significant due to the complexity around when, along with how her storyline played out as season 11 aired in the first half of 2019. This wasn't just the random new season. It was pre-pandemic era, before the sudden boom in international seasons. It was only just 2 years prior that Lady Gaga had been a guest judge for season 9. Despite the series now having turned over a decade old, it had only recently skyrocketed in more mainstream popularity after they started getting more nominations along with winning categories from the Emmys. With that, the new cast of 15 queens was the largest group of girls that they had put together, meaning that it was going to be hell on earth to be able to fight to get in the spotlight during those first few episodes. Fortunately for Rajah, she was going to be getting a decent amount of screen time, only it wasn't going to be the moments that she would have necessarily picked out for herself. Rajah is a polarizing personality from the moment we first start to see the way she interacts with the other queens. What I mean by that is that being polarizing isn't necessarily a bad thing. It could mean that you just have a very strong personality, one that people can't help but take notice of. Rajah knew she belonged on the show. She came across as very comfortable in her element prior to what would soon head her way in terms of consecutively being up for elimination. At this point, the very first impression that fans get of Rajah when she walks into the workroom is tarnished when near seconds after walking over to greet the other girls, her outfit seemingly starts to fall apart with her earrings dangling off from her ear. Yet her real issues would come from her rivalries with other queens, most notably Yvie Oddly and Plastique Tiara. If you haven't watched season 11 or maybe don't remember it all that well, by the time we're 6 episodes into the season, Rajah had already been up for elimination 3 times. The first during the 6th Way lip sync, where Honey Davenport slammed herself into the floor, the second against Mercedes Iman Diamond, with the third being against Scarlet Envy, in what to many was a pretty close call between the two. Regardless, anyone that had even seen just a couple seasons of Drag Race knew that Rajah's time was counted. There was no way at this point that she was ever going to be winning the season, unless she randomly started to win every single challenge that was left. It's that inability to do well in the competition that would also play into her rivalries with Evie Oddly and Plastique Tiara. Unfortunately, the moments that she did get into it with them would always result in the fans going after her for whatever she said on a given week. And honestly, you might be surprised just how horrible some of the messages that she got around this time was. Now, despite her villain edit, Rajah faced an uphill battle because she was also an underdog. I think what separates storylines like Rajah's from, let's say, Global All-Stars, where Queen Kong seemed a little bit too focused on trying to humble Nilania, at least in terms of the edit. Although in this situation, it's somebody that was a frontrunner in the competition going after someone that hadn't even won any challenges. In Rajah's case, she was the villain and also the clear underdog in the competition, having to deal with other contestants that were getting a much more favorable storyline than her. Which is why when she heads into her final challenge, not only was she already defeated, but she already knew that frontrunners like Evie Oddly were going to be making it to the finale. Plus, with all the drama that would happen with Plastique and Untucked, she must have really felt like the universe was against her. Because even on the runway where the queens displayed what they had made from the materials provided, Rajah made pants out of burlap sacks. Now, my mom is a seamstress, and the way that she to this day tells me that Rajah didn't deserve negative critiques for this because A, burlap is an extremely difficult material to work with, but also B, pants are one of the most difficult clothing items to make. And Rajah did both of these things in a very short amount of time, yet ultimately was up for elimination again, placing 9th. Her exit on season 11 was one of the most emotional from the franchise to me, at least in terms of how I felt when I saw her leave. I've always enjoyed queens that bring drama. Even when I don't agree with their reasonings for disliking another contestant, I tend to just gravitate towards the fact that they're being unafraid of showing their true feelings in front of the cameras. It's for that reason that after I saw the way fans were dragging her all season long, I just hoped for a moment where she'd be able to prove herself, changing their perception. Yet it was clear that no matter what she did, her efforts would go in vain. Like yes, her track record sucked, but all of her lip sync performances were honestly not only some of the best of the season, it also highlighted how versatile of a performer she is. Plus, even her runway package for this season was something to take note of. Rajah would later discuss in many future interviews that she did after the season aired regarding the way the fanbase treated her, how difficult it was to handle, and all of it wouldn't really change until a couple years later when she'd get a second opportunity to compete. That's why her friendship with Akira C. Davenport and Silky Nutmeg Ganache was one of the saving graces of her runner's season, since they would go on to have a really strong bond that would carry them on to All-Star 6. When Rajah walks into All-Star 6, she's a completely different person. The skill set to succeed in the competition was always present, so that wasn't ever a doubt, yet her personality had gone towards a much more positive, laid-back, and nurturing persona, rather than the more on the edge, defensive, and impulsive Rajah that we had gotten to know just 2 years prior. This was also the first All-Stars to be filmed after the pandemic lockdowns began, so it was at the height of a lot of mental health struggles that people were going through because a lot of businesses, especially the light night for drag entertainers, was now on hold. In a sense, All-Star 6 was like their new big break, to introduce themselves into the post-pandemic era. For Rajah in particular though, she wanted to do what she couldn't accomplish on season 11, which was to showcase herself in a way that would result in a fan base to carry her career in the time ahead, instead of just dropping her the moment a new season comes along due to a lack of interest or real investment into her brand. Obviously, you all know how the story goes from here. Rajah goes on to slay the competition, creating a complete 180-degree shift in her fan perception, quickly becoming one of the fan favorites to win the crown. While she would go on to lose to Kylie Sonoik Love, it didn't really matter, since she was already reaping the benefits of having competed on All-Star 6, becoming known as the robbed queen. Yet with that, it brings the question. When fans say that Rajah redeemed herself on All-Star 6, there's a part of me that feels it implies that she did a bad job on season 11. I mean, yeah, she didn't do very well in the challenges, but I think what's put into question is the way she behaved, when in fact, a lot of the sound bites of her reading the other queens to this day are shared on Twitter with people quoting how iconic it all was. In a way, while Rajah definitely probably just saw herself on TV and ultimately changed, there is a part of her that must have felt forced to hide her more genuine feelings out of fear that it would result in the firestorm from last time. Yet in what felt like even more of a fever dream, in less than a year after losing All-Star 6, she was invited to compete on Canada vs. the World Season 1, where she'd go on and make it to the top 2 alongside Silky Nutmeg Ganache and win the crown of Queen of the World. world. This pretty much solidified her status as one of the most beloved queens in the franchise, and finally she had a crown to go along with it. In fact, out of the existing versus the world winners, she's probably the most well received and successful with her reign. Then again, she's one of the American queens, so it doesn't really come off as much of a surprise. Although by this point, the idea of Rajah being a villain was long forgotten. Yet the scars of her season 11 experience still linger in the background. If you really think about it, season 11 was the last true organic season, before the backlash began to really affect queens. The seasons that followed the 11th edition of the series would start to wane in terms of villains. One could argue that Britta Filter was the villain of season 12, but it's important to consider that her season was tainted by the Sherry Pie situation. So a lot of the real storylines of what happened had to be watered down or even removed entirely. Yet even as a viewer, Britta and her genuine obsession with Aiden Zane did come across as a genuine display of emotion. It was true anger coming to fruition. What's also unfortunate is that as a result of Sherry Pie being edited out of the season, it sort of put an even bigger burden onto Britta, since it's rumored that Sherry was one of the ones driving the hate wagon on Aiden. But the final edit just made it seem like Britta was acting alone. And that's when we get to season 13. That clearly had a sudden level of caution in terms of the way that people were going to behave on the show, largely due to the shifting fan expectation. That's why out of a cast of 13 queens, Candy was the only one creating good content for the cameras. It's no wonder that after she almost went home, Rue asked her to stay. She literally almost saw the ratings walk out alongside Candy. As a result, villain arcs have kind of become watered down, with queens seeming less and less willing to play the villain role. Or another perspective can be that the idea of what we consider a villain has evolved. Plain Jane is our most recent example of a villain, yet many have argued that she doesn't necessarily represent the true essence of a reality TV villain that we have come to know within the Drag Race universe. A real villain at its core is someone that's meant to be the antagonist of the season, that most people aren't gonna want to root for. It's a pretty good element to have, as it helps elevate other contestants to make the fans more interested in them. Overall, the idea of good versus evil has always been pretty basic, yet a super effective way of keeping an audience engaged. We've seen over the years how seasons that lack drama tend to not end up being very remembered in the future. Yet in terms of what we've seen in the most recent seasons, 15 and 16, the two I guess you could say villains were Mistress Isabel Brooks and Plain Jane. While I agree that both of these queens were super shady, ending up as polarizing figures during the airing of their respective seasons, to a degree, you could tell that a lot of their jokes or attacks on other queens were pretty much tongue-in-cheek. It never at any point felt serious. It really did look like it was just two queens that were there to stir up things. So the lack of genuineness to their behavior in a way turned them into more of a chaotic character that people started to warm up to the more time went by. On the other hand, villains like Jeremy Carey, Rajah O'Hara, or even as recently Queen Kong came across as more authentic when it came to their shady remarks, prompting barely any support from fans. Regardless, the whole concept of villains can be arbitrary depending on who you're talking to. Yet, what's your take? Do you think what we consider a villain has sort of changed? And is there a double standard depending on whether or not a queen is doing it just for the joke, or because they deep down really don't like another queen? Let me know in the comments.
Thanks again to Raycon for sponsoring today's video. Make sure to click the link in the description to get 20 to 50% off your first order, which includes free shipping.
I want to take a moment to thank my patrons. In the Elite Pink Squad, we have Matthew Burns, Gay Uncle, Sari Tish, Natasha DeLeon, Las Potitas, and Cool Gal Nan. In the Green Squad, we have Cayman Rider Furry, Edgar Allan Pub, The Only Sean, Jack Beck, IJS, Not a Punch But a Keek, Captain Chaos, Bashir with a good beard, Galeria Gomez, Dea, Sarah G, Scarlet Rose, Boiled Peanut, Kimberly Marin, Max Whale, and Olivia Marr. If you'd like to see your name on the screen, you can support me on Patreon. The link will be in the description. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I highly recommend you watch some of my other videos on my channel. I put a lot of effort into every single thing I upload, so if you're bored and want to check something else out, go and give it a look. I'll see you guys next time.